Well, good afternoon. Thank you for taking some time to watch this little slideshow here, all about our journey with technology at Heronsgate Primary School and how Jamf fits into that all. So my name's Tim Lings and I'm Director of Digital Learning here at Heronsgate Primary School. And I guess there aren't many primary schools that have someone like me, so I guess our story is unique in that way. Now, I started off teaching in 2008 as a nursery teacher, then worked across the school as a specialist music teacher before becoming an assistant head in 2015. But from the start, my overriding passion has been to see schools use good technology and use it well, which is why I lean quite strongly towards Apple. So our school motto is that we discover and realise the genius in everyone. So regardless of a child's background, we want them to live up to their potential. So here's a few photos of our school. On the left is our West Thamesmead campus. So there's 3 form there. And then on the right is our Woolwich Royal Arsenal campus, 15 minutes walk down the road, and they're both based in South East London. So a little bit more about our school. We have 4 form entry across the 2 sites, and we have 30% of children attract pupil premium funding. So that's children who've received free school meals in the last 6 years, and so we get some extra funding to help support them. 54% of children speak English as a second language. So that's some children starting the school with little or no English, but mostly it's children just coming from a range of cultures where English isn't necessarily the first language at home. And if you look at the indices of multiple deprivation map, our campuses are within the top 20% most deprived areas in the country. So with these challenges, our aim is to give children the best possible education to overcome the barriers they may face due to their background. And we were graded outstanding by Ofsted in 2008, and on their return in 2019 they didn't change the grade, which was nice. But they did comment on our commitment to seeing all children succeed regardless of their background. So we are also a technology-rich school. So we've now got to the point where we have a one-to-one program in both Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, and that means that every child in years 1 to 6 has access all the time to a device that they can use whenever it's needed for learning. And in order for staff to be part of that technology journey, every adult has a device too. So teachers have got an iPad each, plus there's often a Mac in the classroom. Admin staff use Macs, and even teaching assistants have an iPad each too, so that they're able to support children with their learning. So for a school our size, that means it's 70 or so Macs and 800 plus iPads. We also have Apple TVs connected to either projectors or large displays in classrooms, meaning that devices' screens can be easily mirrored using AirPlay. And all of this is based around the idea that technology can be an effective tool for learning. So how did it all begin? It didn't start like this. So if I go back to 2010, that's when I took on the responsibility of being ICT coordinator. Now the school had quite a lot of technology already. I think we had the ICT mark already at that point, but there were some issues that needed addressing, and one of them was that there actually weren't a lot of computers that children could actually use that were available for children. So for example, the PCs in the ICT suite were old and unreliable and were totally unable to use to deliver the IT curriculum as it stood then, which included things like video editing. So I proposed we get some Macs, and as a little experiment, we got a suite of 18 iMacs installed. And it was actually a really great place to start because teachers had to come and use them every week, once a week. And so the Mac offered us a reliable platform that it would work, it would keep on working with capable equipment that was able to deliver our curriculum. So that was going well, and we had lots of success there. And as we thought about how we're going to scale that up across the school in terms of increasing access to devices, we had to think of a different way through. And thankfully, Apple had been working on their little tablet device, the iPad, so that then became an option for us. So we started getting some class sets of those. So the iPad was a much more affordable computer per device, which still had that level of reliability and capability. So we started getting more and more class sets as the years went on. And what was interesting is that the device wanted to be one-to-one, even from the start. So that even when devices were spread across the school, teachers would still book out all 30 so that every child could get one, even if it was just for one lesson. So with the increase of the devices in the school, and with Apple changing their approach to Mac management, we needed a solution that could manage all our Macs and our iPads too. So we already had tried various free MDMs for iPad, but they didn't have the tools we needed to manage the Macs too. So after some research, we went for the Casper suite, or as Jamf Pro as it's called now. as it offered a web-based MDM that was fully featured for both Mac and iPad. And I'm really glad we did, because the following year we decided to go one-to-one iPad in Key Stage 2, and that meant 15 classes worth of devices, so 450 devices, and that just would not have been manageable without Jamf Pro as our MDM. So for example, when it came to setting them up, we got the students to set them up. We'd go into a class, give out all the iPads, they would turn them on, sign in with their credentials, download the apps they needed from self-service, and you could do a class of 30 in an hour. And so it was very straightforward to get a whole week up and running, a whole school up and running in the first week of term. So the Key Stage 1 teachers at this point still had shared sets, and so we ended up going one-to-one with them in 2018 as well. So what's been some of the impacts on learning that we've seen? I just wanted to pull a few things out. The first thing is that we've seen impact on digital confidence, that with every child having a device, and as that device being used across the curriculum for learning, children are just really confident using a computer, and that actually made a huge difference when it came to the lockdowns with COVID, that we could make that switch to remote learning really easily as children were used to that learning platform and used to using a computer for learning. And we were able to send home 300 devices at the start of last year as well, and to help support that. And they all came back, which was nice. We've seen an impact on student engagement, so even after having these devices in school for years, children still love using them. And it also meets children in their world, which is often digital, as well as giving teachers really good options for engaging lessons. We've seen real development in oracy skills, so it's really easy on the iPad for children to record their thoughts using the microphone, and that can be shared with teachers. So that's been great, particularly for younger children. And because that voice can be captured, it gives more place for it in the classroom. We've seen an impact reducing workload, even if it's things like photocopying, because it's just so much more easy for teachers to send documents and resources to a whole set of iPads instead of having to get them all copied. And it just makes teaching with iPad a whole lot of fun as well. We've seen a lovely impact with creativity, as there's just so many content creation apps and tools on the iPad. You know, you can word process documents, you can do drawing presentation, you can make video, music. There's just a lot of potential on the iPad of things that kids can make. And we've also seen some good stuff with metacognition as well, as that it's just very easy for children to quickly and easily reflect on their learning, perhaps using the markup tools on the iPad or different things that come with our learning platform. So how has Jamf Pro helped? How is it perhaps different to another MDM? And I think the main thing that Jamf Pro's really helped with is that they are completely focused on Apple, and so they offer this day zero support for all the latest features that Apple cooks up, which means that we get to make use of those for learning in this classroom rather than having to wait for our MDM to get that working. And that really does make a difference, because Apple has quite an aggressive development cycle. So every year, come WWDC, lots of things are released, and sometimes new features get released mid-cycle too, particularly in education, and it makes a difference to know that Jamf have got it in hand, that it's going to be supported in some way by them. So as a school that wants to keep on innovating, Jamf Pro lets us keep up with Apple as far as that's possible. So we're not being held back by our MDM, we can keep moving forwards. So one way that we're able to keep moving forwards is things like Apple Classroom. So it's a great app that teachers can see all the iPads in their class and see what's on their screens, as well as lock screens, mute the audio, share files. It's an invaluable app, and it helps teachers really feel like they're in charge when the kids are using iPads in the classroom. So this was released mid-cycle in 2016, and of course Jamf supported it straight away. So initially this app, you actually had to have an MDM in order to populate all the class roster information. But we, with Jamf Pro, were able to just click a few buttons and just get it installed for teachers. And rather than being held back by an MDM, we were able to just get on with it straight away. So that was a really useful start to our one-to-one iPad program, definitely. There's also things like device enrollment. So again, this is one of Apple's ideas, but Jamf Pro made it happen. So Apple have a concept with managing devices called supervision. So if an institution owns a device, they can make it supervised, where certain certificates and profiles get put on the device. And then because Apple knows that it's owned by the school, there are certain extra restrictions and controls that you wouldn't get on an unsupervised device. So when supervision first came out, you had to plug the iPad into a Mac and use Apple Configurator to get it supervised. But using device enrollment, this can be done over the air when the iPad is first set up. So that was a great time saver when thinking of rolling out 450 one-to-one iPads, that we knew that as they were turned on and set up, that supervision process would happen. And the other advantage is that the pupils can't remove that profile without wiping their iPad. So as a school, giving these iPads to the students, we know that there's nothing they can do to get around the restrictions and controls we're putting in place. So that's very reassuring from a safeguarding perspective, that we know they're not going to kind of sneaking around what we're trying to do to just keep them safe in what they're doing. Another thing is shared iPad mode. So when we started our one-to-one program for Key Stage 2 in 2016, our Key Stage 1 teachers were immediately wondering when they were going to get them too. So there was that feeling of, how am I meant to teach without an iPad for every child? Which is very true, but perhaps most schools don't have that problem. So in 2018, we decided we were going to go one-to-one with Key Stage 1 as well. But one of the considerations we had was about how these devices were going to be set up. So could we ask a 5-year-old to type in their Manage Apple ID or log into Active Directory? Or would we have to sit there and type that all in ourselves 240 times, one by one? So instead we decided to make use of Apple's shared iPad mode, which is a deployment model that Apple invented back in 2016 that allows multiple users to log onto one iPad and give that personalized experience on whatever device they choose. This needs an MDM to support it, and of course Jamf Pro did. So that makes the setup of these a lot easier. So once you've imported all that information with Apple School Manager, Jamf Pro pushes it down to the iPad, and so you're literally presented with a page of all the kids' names in their class. They can tap on their name, put in a passcode, and they're in. It's just a lot easier. And it also simplifies much of the user experience, because there's a lot less buttons to press and break in settings, as well as it puts the child's name at the top left of the screen as well. So it's been really helpful to be able to make use of this technology with our younger students. Another thing that we've also been doing more recently is assigning books from the Apple Bookstore using Jamf Pro. So with the way it works with book licenses, they can only be used once. So we're just doing it with free titles. As you know, you can just buy another 1,000 free copies of a certain book. So because all our students have managed Apple IDs, we're able to assign those licenses to those accounts using Jamf Pro. And the really good thing is it's all done automatically in the background, so long as the student is signed in onto their iPad into the bookstore. And so that means that we can make use of Apple's great content, such as Everyone Can Code or Everyone Can Create curriculum. We can just send those to the students and they can access those resources. And that's really great. And last thing about Jamf Pro is it makes a real difference in managing the Apple TVs in the school. So we use Apple TV all the time because it's a great way to get the content of an iPad screen onto a big display, whether that's a TV or a projector, and teachers can run their slides from their iPads, or students can share their learning too. So with device enrollment, we're able to set up these Apple TVs really easily with Jamf Pro. So you can make all the settings on the MDM, and then when you first plug that Apple TV in, it just skips through all the setup screens and you end up in that conference room mode, ready to do AirPlaying. So all you need to do is just plug in the Ethernet cable and it just sorts itself out, which is really great. And then you've got that control, and should the class names change throughout the year, you can just change that very easily. So those are some ways that we were able to keep up with Apple, but another thing that we're able to do is keep up with the cloud, because that's the way things are going with IT, and Jamf Pro have really helped us to be able to do that too. So when we first got Jamf Pro, it was just sitting on a little Mac Mini server in our school, but now we have Jamf host it for us in the cloud, which takes a job out of my hands and lets us as a school focus on learning, not managing MySQL databases or Java. So that's really great that we're able to kind of give that job to Jamf. They can do the whole thing. We've also really leaned into Microsoft accounts at school over the last year, and mainly because they just work in so many places. So for example, we've federated them with our managed Apple IDs so that the kids, that's one login that they're going to remember their password to. And then you can use single sign-on with Jamf Pro, so I can log into Jamf Pro as an administrator with my Microsoft account. But also kids can log onto their iPads as part of that setup process with that account too, and it all works really smoothly. So, and then one last thing that we've been able to do recently is set up Jamf Connect for the Mac, which means that users can log onto their Macs with a Microsoft account, rather than the Mac attached to an Active Directory, which has been really great. So we're trying to make use of that one cloud identity in as many places as we can, and Jamf Pro has given us those tools to make that happen. So what's next for us as a school? A couple of things we're really thinking about is to make use of Logitech crayons as iPad styluses. The teachers really love using them as part of with their Apple Pencils on their iPads, as you know, for modelling with teaching. But when you have sets for kids to use, it opens up all sorts of creative opportunities for children. Plus, we're also exploring augmented reality more to, again, make that more immersive learning experience for children. It's something they can both use and create with. But whatever we do as we move forward, we know that Jamf Pro is going to be making sure that they're able to support whatever Apple invents and whatever the way things are going. We're confident they're going to continue helping us as a school. So thank you for taking the time to listen, and we hope that gives you an insight into our journey with Jamf Pro at Heronsgate Primary School.